Hello, my name is Wendy Barta, and this is Astrology 102. It covers aspects, aspect patterns, and rulerships. Astrology 102 is the second in a continuing series of introductory astrology classes. I hope you enjoy it. If you would like copies of the slides I'm presenting today, you can get them on Amazon. Just put in either my name, Wendy Barta, or Astrology 102 Workbook. If you're an Amazon Prime customer, you get free shipping. If you do decide to purchase the book, I would recommend you wait until it arrives so you can use it to take notes. Before we get started with aspects, I'd like to include a review of the astrology keywords that I use for interpretation. They were originally covered in Astrology 101, and I've included this section as a review for those who studied it before or to get people up to speed who have not. When I first began studying astrology, I read through a lot of books and I found the information somewhat overwhelming. Then I came across keywords and it made things a lot easier for me and helped me learn a lot faster. So I have keywords developed for all of the houses, signs, and planets to help jumpstart the beginning students' understanding of astrology and to help with basic chart synthesis, which is in part 2. So we'll go through, and again, I've broken these out by element, and we will talk about each of the signs and some of the critical keywords that are associated with them. The first sign is Aries. One of the phrases people often use to represent Aries is I am, though as an Aries myself, I sometimes think it should be I do, because I tend to take a lot of action. Aries are assertive, brave, they like to initiate, they're impetuous, energetic, and self-oriented. Leo is another fire sign, and the key phrase associated with that is I will. Leos are creative, risk takers, they're charismatic, they're fun-loving, generous, and exciting. The third fire sign is Sagittarius, and its phrase is I understand. Sagittarius is benevolent, optimistic, extravagant, enthusiastic, and idealistic. Let's look at the Earth sign keywords now. Taurus, the key phrase for that is I have. And Taurians like comfort. They're deliberate, dependable, placid, possessive, and very sensual. Virgo, I analyze. Virgos are work-oriented. They'll take painstaking attention to detail. They're efficient, pragmatic, exacting, and discreet. Capricorn, I use. Capricorns are responsible, they're formal, traditional, authoritative, and career-oriented. The air signs are the next group. The first one is Gemini, and its key phrase is I think. Geminis are fluent and versatile. They're curious and intermittent. They're clever and very nimble. Libra, I balance. Libras are cooperative, diplomatic. They'll sit on the fence. They're competitive and aesthetic. The last air sign is Aquarius. The key phrase is I know. Aquarians are unique, rebellious, futuristic, independent, inventive, and objective. The last group we'll look at are the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Cancer has a key phrase, I feel. Cancers are nurturing and warm, dependent, sympathetic. They're protective and very security-oriented. Scorpio, I desire. Scorpios are very penetrating, intense, and resourceful. They're very powerful and compulsive. Pisces, its key phrase is I believe. Pisces are emotional, intuitive, illusory, sensitive, spiritual, and compassionate. Let's start with the first three personal planets, the Sun, Moon, and Mercury. The Sun represents your personality, your true self. It represents your creative endeavors, self-esteem, how you meet challenges, your big goals in life, and sometimes it represents your father. The Moon represents emotions, what you need to feel secure, what you're receptive to, what you're dependent upon, your drive to nurture, and in some cases, women or your mother. Mercury represents how you communicate, how you think, listen, and learn, your ability to learn, your perceptions and your logic, and your ability to information gather. The remaining two personal planets are Venus and Mars. Venus represents how you receive love and how you relate to others, how you attract what you want, art, beauty, refinement, how you feel about money or spend your money, devotion, and your female traits. It represents what you value. Mars is how you give love, how you express your energy, compete with others, get what you want, how you handle a crisis, experience conflict, your sexual energy, and your aggression. While the first 5 planets dealt more with you as an individual, the interpersonal planets, Jupiter and Saturn, deal more with how you interact with your environment. Jupiter is about expansion. How you expand your boundaries, explore new ideas, how you indulge yourself, your luck, your faith, your personal growth, and how you attract abundance. Saturn, the taskmaster, is how you meet limitations, deal with responsibilities, cope with your house placements, learn your life lessons, how you deal with discipline, how you carry your burdens, and how you deal with your karma. The last group of planets, the generational planets, were all discovered since 1781, so they don't really fall under any of the planets that were used in classical astrology. The first one, Uranus, was discovered in 1781, and it deals with individuality, innovation, inventiveness, sudden changes, humanitarian instincts, and anything future-oriented. Neptune, which was discovered in 1846, deals with the quest for oneness, idealism, intuition, imagination and fantasy, confusion, and compassion. The dwarf planet Pluto was discovered in 1930. It deals with transformation, intensity, sexual needs, resentment and forgiveness, and compulsions. Let's look a little bit more at the first quadrant houses, those that have the characteristics of being self-oriented and private. The first house deals with you yourself, your identity and appearance, your personal actions and your instincts. The second house deals with your pleasures, your resources, the money you've earned, tangible beauty and comfort. And the third house deals with how you communicate, siblings, things in your local vicinity, transportation, and lower school learning. The second quadrant houses have the characteristics of being relationship-oriented and private. The fourth house deals with your home, your family, dependencies and nurturance, your roots and your parents. The fifth house deals with loved ones, children, speculation, risk-taking, and self-esteem. The sixth house deals with your work, especially on a daily level, employees, colleagues, and your personal health. The third quadrant houses have the characteristics of being relationship-oriented and worldly. The seventh house deals with marriage, partnerships, competition, visual beauty, and balance. The eighth house deals with sexuality, money from others, death and taxes, and the occult. The ninth house deals with education, especially higher level education, travel, the worldview, religions, values, and ideals. The fourth quadrant houses have the characteristics of being self-oriented and worldly. The 10th house is how you deal with authorities, reality, status, career, and duties. The 11th house deals with alternatives, friends, groups, causes, and progress. The 12th house deals with your higher self, the unconscious, the need for oneness, visions, dreams, and mental health. This section covers aspects. Aspects build on concepts that we learned about planets, houses, and signs in Astrology 101. It looks at the synergy between them. When you have synergy between planets or planets and points in a chart, it shows you the areas of emphasis. This is helpful for chart interpretation. Let's look at the basics of aspects, how they're built. Each astrology wheel is 360 degrees around in circumference. It is broken into 12 signs, each which occupy 30 degrees, or 1/12 of the 360 degrees. Keeping that in mind, you'll start to see how we use those 12ths to build the concept of aspects and energy patterns between the planets. What exactly is an aspect? An aspect is the angular relationship between two planets or a planet and a calculated point on the chart. Let's look at a couple of examples. First, let's look at the aspect between Jupiter and Mercury, two planets. You see a 60-degree sextile between them. That's the aspect. Now let's look at a planet and a point, Mercury and the ascendant. This example shows a 90-degree square between the ascendant and Mercury. Aspects can be categorized into two types: dynamic or challenging aspects, and harmonious or flowing aspects. Dynamic or challenging aspects refer to squares of 90 degrees, oppositions of 180, quincunx of 150, and depending upon the signs and planets involved, the conjunction at 0 degrees. Harmonious or flowing aspects are the trines of 120 degrees, the sextiles of 60 degrees, and again, depending upon the signs and planets involved, the conjunction of 0 degrees. Just a note, we are not going to be covering out-of-sign aspects in this talk. These are the primary aspects we'll be studying in this course. The conjunction is either a harmonious or challenging aspect. There are 0 degrees between the two planets. The sextile is a harmonious aspect. There are 60 degrees between the two planets. A square is challenging. They say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There are 90 degrees between the two planets. The trine is another harmonious aspect. There are 120 degrees between the planets. A quincunx is a challenging aspect at 150 degrees. And the last one we'll be studying is an opposition, which is challenging at 180 degrees. So let's learn how to interpret an aspect. The example we'll use is Saturn at 14 degrees Sagittarius in the 12th house, trining Mercury in 14 degrees Aries in the 3rd house. The first step to interpret the trine is to identify all the possible keywords associated with the two planets. I've put the list together here, so we have the keywords for the planet Saturn, which is in Sagittarius in the 12th house, and the second planet, Mercury, which is in Aries in the 3rd house. The next step is selecting keywords from each list. For the first planet, Saturn, we select responsibility and discipline. For the sign of Sagittarius, enthusiastic. For the 12th house, we select higher self, unconscious, and vision dreams. The second planet is Mercury. For Mercury, we select communication, listening and talking, and information gathering. For the sign of Aries, we select initiate. For the 3rd house, we select communication and learning. Now for the 3rd step, let's look at interpretation. For convenience, I've copied over all of the keywords we selected in step 2. Determine the theme of all the keywords that have been identified. There's a strong emphasis on communications, which can be verbal or written, information gathering, learning, and talking, which can be teaching. Strong discipline, ability to initiate, and an interest in higher self visions and dreams. A trine is a positive, harmonious aspect, so Saturn will reinforce and provide structure to the skills of Mercury. Let's make a sentence. This individual is interested in teaching, writing, and communicating their ideas about 12th house interests, involving mysteries, hidden things, and understanding the universe. Now that we've reviewed keyword interpretation as it pertains to aspects, let's now go through all of the major aspects used in astrology and show you an example of how to interpret them. The conjunction at 0 degrees is the most powerful aspect that combines two planetary energies into a single force. Most powerful conjunctions include one of the personal planets, such as the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, or Mars, or the ascendant. These conjunctions characterize strong energy flows and personal expression by planet and sign, and a dominant influence in the person's life by house. The keynote of the conjunction is action and self-projection. Let's begin with the conjunction. There's one conjunction in this chart between Mars in Capricorn and Mercury in Capricorn, both in the 12th house. Given that Mars and Mercury are in the 12th house, which deals with dreams and illusions, and Mars deals with action, and Mercury deals with intelligence and verbal and written communications, we can construct the following sentences to describe the individual. The individual has a sharp mind and can express his thoughts in a decisive manner. He can be effective as a spokesperson. There is an aptitude for writing also, and he enjoys mentally stimulating work. Now let's talk about the 120-degree trine. It's one of the most powerful, harmonious aspects, and it represents an easy flow of energy between the planets. Planets that are in trine are in signs of the same element, and thus have reinforcing energies. Planets in the same element are more naturally integrated. People sometimes say, "Oh, isn't it wonderful if I have lots of trines?" But abilities and talents shown by trines are often taken for granted, and the person may not appreciate them or even be aware of them. This chart has 3 trines. The first one between Neptune in Libra and the Sun in Aquarius. The second trine is between the Sun in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. And the third trine is between Neptune in Libra and Uranus in Gemini. Let's look at the first trine, Neptune in Libra and the Sun in Aquarius. We can construct the following sentences based on the blended energies. The individual is imaginative and attracted to creative pursuits. He can be idealistic and sometimes impractical. The second trine, the Sun in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini, the unusual appeals to this individual. He enjoys a sense of freedom and adventure. The individual has the potential to be a creative genius. The third trine is Neptune in Libra and Uranus in Gemini. Since these are generational planets, this individual is born into a group that lasted about 5 years. This group possesses a high degree of imagination and intuition, and they believe in new ideals for society. Now let's look at the 60-degree sextile. This is a strong harmonious aspect, but less powerful than a trine. Planets in sextile do not share the same element or modality. A sextile represents the potential for making new connections with either other people or ideas that can ultimately lead to something new. It includes an automatic natural attunement and sometimes a definite skill. This chart has 2 sextiles. The first one is between Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Leo. The second sextile is between Neptune in Libra and Pluto in Leo. The first sextile is between Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Leo. Individual belongs to a group, generational, who will be positive reformers and innovators. These are both generational planets. Sextile number 2, Neptune in Libra and Pluto in Leo. The individual belongs to a group or generation that has interests in deep spiritual development. Again, 2 generational planets. Now let's look at the 90-degree square. This is a strong aspect that creates friction between 2 planets of the same modality, but inharmonious elements. It usually requires significant effort to integrate these divergent energies. Any close square involving one of the personal planets represents a major life challenge. A square shows you where energy must be released, usually through action, in order that a new structure can be built. People are often afraid of dealing with whatever is symbolized by the squares in our charts, so they often give us the opportunities for the most personal growth. This chart has 1 square. It's between Neptune in Libra and Saturn in Cancer. The square of Neptune in Libra and Saturn in Cancer can be described as individual strives and struggles with ideals or spiritual aspirations. Let's look at the opposition at 180 degrees. This is an extremely powerful aspect between 2 planets, which places them in conflict with each other, producing difficulties, but increasing the range of possibilities open to the individual. As with the square, the planets share the same modality, but are in different elements. This can produce a constant challenge in the area of personal relationships. since the individual tends to project the different sides of his or her nature onto the other. Opposite signs are similar in many ways, and in fact complementary. The key for oppositions is learning how to balance the energies between the two opposing planets. This chart has two oppositions. The first one is between the Sun in Aquarius and Pluto in Leo. The second opposition is between Venus in Pisces and Jupiter in Virgo. The first opposition is between the Sun in Aquarius and Pluto in Leo. A sentence that can be created to describe this is, the individual is attracted to power and enjoys personal recognition. He is also fascinated with death and the darker sides of life. The second opposition is Venus in Pisces and Jupiter in Virgo. The sentence that can be created is, the individual is generous with friends and family. He enjoys socializing with friends, but maintains his independence in close relationships. The last aspect that we will discuss in this class is the 150-degree quincunx. A quincunx is a strong energy flow between two planets, but the individual may experience these energies as being too compulsive or irritating. This aspect involves signs of inharmonious elements and different modalities. It's difficult to remain aware of both energies simultaneously, and someone usually needs to make a conscious, concerted effort to do so. So it's important to be aware of both energies, because it often seems that the expression of the two energies are not well integrated. This chart has one quincunx. It is between Venus in Pisces and the Moon in Leo. The quincunx in this chart is between Venus in Pisces and the Moon in Leo. The sentence we build is, the individual must integrate the need for financial prudence with the need to experience a fun-loving, generous relationship with his life partner. So how do you determine whether you have an aspect between two planets or a planet and a point? You need to look at the orb. The orb is the number of degrees on either side of a planet that's used to determine whether you have an aspect. For example, let's say you have the Sun at 9 degrees Aquarius. A conjunction with a 10-degree orb would be formed with any other planet found between 29 degrees Capricorn and 19 degrees Aquarius. Now, different aspects have different orbs. The chart to the right shows the degrees that are used for the orbs for each of the different aspects. Some astrologers use different variations of these orbs as they prefer. This section will cover some of the more commonly used aspect patterns. An aspect pattern is 3 or more planets connected by aspect, and it tends to function as a unit. There are some requirements for an aspect pattern. They must all be physical bodies, no calculated points like an ascendant or a midheaven, and they must all be in the correct sign. Aspect patterns also tend to use a smaller orb than we discussed previously. A stellium is an aspect pattern of 3 or more planets in the same sign that are conjunct each other. What happens with this type of an aspect is the energies of the planets tend to fuse together and provide a very dominant factor in the chart. The key to having a stellium is to find the balance between the strong focus of the stellium and the remainder of the chart. A grand trine is an aspect pattern where you have 3 planets in the same element: earth, air, fire, or water. This forms an equilateral triangle in the chart. Energetically, The nature of a trine is ease and harmony, but sometimes the trine can make things a little too easy, although everyone loves to have them. Let's look at the grand trines by element. A fire trine tends to be extremely active. Individuals with fire trines need to learn to conserve their energy and to not overextend themselves. Earth trines tend to be the least active and are very grounded. They enjoy pursuing physical pleasures and creature comforts. The challenge for the Earth trine is to take action. An air trine is very social with an active mind. Seek to find balance between opposites and prefer talk to action. A water trine is very emotional and spiritual. Water trines are sensitive to the emotions of others. They're good in a crisis, but can experience excess emotional drama. Now let's look at the Grand Cross. A Grand Cross is an aspect between four planets in the same modality: cardinal, fixed, or mutable. It forms four squares and two oppositions. A Grand Cross can be stressful with the squares forcing action, and the key to dealing with a Grand Cross is balancing the oppositions. An individual with a cardinal Grand Cross is concerned with issues of identity. They can feel overextended from four planets all pulling in different directions. Someone with a fixed Grand Cross is concerned with issues of self-worth. They need to learn to be more flexible and to accept outside input. A mutable Grand Cross has challenges in maintaining focus. They need to learn how to juggle all of the balls without dropping any. A T-square is an aspect pattern of three planets in the same modality, either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. It forms two squares and one opposition. The apex planet is the planet in the T-square that is not part of any opposition. But when a transiting planet reaches an opposition point, you can create a Grand Cross. The key for a T-square is in balancing the opposition. A T-square is similar to a Grand Cross for the cardinal, fixed, and mutable modalities, but it's more unbalanced. As I mentioned on the previous slide, a Grand Cross can be created whenever a transiting planet hits that missing fourth leg. The stress will come from the opposition that's created. To relieve stress on the other planets, you take action through the apex planet. One of my favorite aspect patterns involves a yod. It consists of three planets, two sextile each other, and the third in a quincunx or inconjunct at 150 degrees with the other two planets. This forms an acute isosceles triangle. One of the things that first attracted me to a yod is its nickname, the Finger of God. A yod represents a crisis in timing. When properly integrated, the apex or focal point planet is the resolution. Now let's do an exercise. Can you identify the grand trine in this chart? Can you interpret the implications of the grand trine? Give it a try, and we'll see what the answer is on the next slide. This chart has a grand trine in air with the Sun, Neptune, and Uranus. These three planets that form a grand trine express themselves intellectually. Individuals with this grand trine will also most likely be relationship-oriented. When we talk about a planet and the sign it rules, it's really an evaluation of the planet's strength. Simply put, a planet in the sign it rules is stronger. On an esoteric level, planets in their sign of rulership are operating at the highest level of being. Rulership is one of 5 essential dignities used in classical astrology, and it's the only one that I'm going to be talking about in this particular class. It has many useful functions, as you will see, so I thought it would be best to include it now. So, what are rulerships? In astrology, each sign and house has a ruling planet. Natal planets in the sign of rulership are strengthened. For example, the Sun in Leo. Houses without planets use the ruler of the house cusp for chart interpretation. That's one of the reasons we're covering rulerships. There are 2 different definitions of rulerships, classical and modern. Classical rulerships were defined thousands of years ago. At that time, Saturn was the farthest observable planet. Modern rulerships were developed after the discovery of Uranus in 1781 and the later discoveries of Neptune and Pluto. This is a table showing the classical rulers by sign. So the ruler of Aries is Mars, the ruler of Taurus is Venus, Gemini is Mercury, Cancer is the Moon, Leo the Sun, Virgo Mercury, the ruler of Libra is Venus, the ruler of Scorpio is Mars, the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter, the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. This is a visual of a chart showing the rulers by house. You'll notice there is a bit of symmetry to it. Starting with Mercury, the rulerships of the houses go in order: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And then starting from the moon side, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. That's one of the things I like about the classical rulerships. They're a lot easier to remember. Now let's look at the modern rulers by sign. You'll notice there are 3 new planets here. Scorpio is now ruled by Pluto, Aquarius by Uranus, and Pisces by Neptune. The other rulerships remain the same. Some people will use both rulerships, modern and classical, when they're doing analysis. This graphic contains the modern rulers by house. Now, Pluto rules the 8th house, Uranus rules the 11th house, and Neptune rules the 12th house. But the rest of the planetary rulerships remain the same. The chart ruler, or ruler of the chart, refers to the planet that rules the sign of the ascendant in the horoscope. In this example, the 1st house cusp, the ascendant, is in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. So Venus is the ruler of the chart. So how do we determine what the significance of the chart ruler is? The chart ruler indicates a central theme in the life of an individual. So first, we identify the planet which rules the ascendant. Then we look to the house that the planet is in. We blend the energies of the ascendant, its ruling planets, and the sign house of the ruling planet's location in the natal chart. This gives you the central theme of the life of the individual. Rulerships are also useful for empty houses. This chart has 3 empty houses. The 2nd house cusp, which is Scorpio, ruled by Pluto or Mars. The 3rd house cusp, which is Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. and the 11th house cusp in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So how do we interpret the empty houses? In a natal chart with an empty house, that means there are no planets in it, you use the sign on the house cusp to determine the ruling planet. Then, the characteristics of the ruling planet influence the chart, just as if a planet were there. This concludes Astrology 102, where we have covered aspects, aspect patterns, and rulerships. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.